Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I am Michael Rebel, the host and founder of the Ever Forward Mindset podcast. I'm a 20-year-old entrepreneur who chose entrepreneurship over the traditional college path, inspired and driven by my goal to retire my mother and to help other Main Street middle Americans just like her learn about and invest in asset classes like multifamily real estate to build and learn about long-lasting financial freedom. And this past February of this year, she was able to step away from her W-2 and join me full-time in Ever Forward Capital Partners. And speaking of entrepreneurship and leaving the W 2 life to pursue something greater, I have someone on the show that knows just how to talk about that. Jens, how are you, my friend? Great to have you on the show.
I'm great, Michael. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you and your listeners today.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure's mine. We've been talking a little bit, on that one call that we had, and also just back and forth through email and just seeing what you've built. But I know quite a bit. We've had a lot of discussions, but how did you even start? What was your background? What sparked that flame, I guess, to go into commercial real estate, into the real estate background? Like, what's your story? How'd you get there?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't start as young as you did, Michael. I took the more traditional path. I came to the United States 30 years ago this year. So as a young man, came over here, did a traditional college path, undergrad, graduate degree, and then I worked in telecommunication and IT for the next 25 years, really, until my mid 40s. Great jobs, moved around the country, had a comfortable life, but didn't have the freedom, right? Because it was going into the office every single day, right? And being on my boss's schedule and so on and so forth. So that was, it started to bother me more and more as I grew older, right? Because, like, man, I don't want to do this another 20 plus years. And I was looking around for an entrepreneurial path. And the one thing that kept coming up was real estate investing because my goal was to disconnect or decouple my income from my time or my time from my income, right? Because as a traditional employee, you work 1 hour, you get 1 hour pay, right? That's kind of how that is. Yeah, maybe some bonus and stuff, but it's very much tied to the amount of work you do. Real estate is different because if you buy right, you get the right properties, you can disconnect that in the sense that you get paid, when you sleep, when you're on vacation, on the weekends and whatnot, right? So that really attracted me because I did want to free up some time, right? To travel back to my home country, to pursue other interests, to not being in the office from 9 to 5, right? So started investing 10 years ago. This year was actually here in July. The anniversary is coming up. The 10-year anniversary is coming up on that. Start buying smaller properties in New Mexico and then scaled up and so on. So before I go into that whole thing, happy to explore any areas that seems interesting.
Well, I'm really glad you brought up the fact of time freedom because there's so many people out there that are just thinking, okay, the W-2, like the more hours I work, the more I'm going to get paid, and the more I can travel, the more I can do. Well, actually, it's actually hurting you instead, and you realize that you're like, well, I am getting paid for all the hours I've worked, but at the same time, when I'm asleep or when I'm on vacation doing the things I want to, it just stops. And you realize that, well, I'm working for the dollar. Why isn't it working for me? And that's exactly what you did. And that's exactly what I talk about. I'm like, we're working so hard for the dollar value and the dollar amount that we need to survive and also to build a future. But what is it doing? Like, it needs to do its part, it needs to schlep its own way. So I'm really glad you dove into that a little bit because that's the one place where it's like, and as well as I do, not every job's secure. And it may seem it, but not necessarily, not in this day and age, unfortunately. But I would love to dive into why New Mexico at the time. Why did you first start buying property out there? What was the size of these properties? Were they big? Were they just small, like single family duplexes, triplexes? Dive into that for me.
Yeah, yeah. So I was living in southwestern Colorado at that time, in small town, kind of in the mountains. And, I didn't have the mindset for going big. I didn't have the mindset for, going all over the country to buying property. So I felt like, let me start local. Local didn't actually really make sense when I started looking. And then I got introduced to a broker down in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that was 3.5 hours away at that time by car. So it was close enough to be able to make the trip there in a day and back, but not close enough to be self-managing, right?
Right.
So, and it made sense, from a dollars and cents standpoint, right? So, there 10 years ago, we bought two. fourplexes, and we, being me and my wife, bought two fourplexes, and they were really inexpensive. One was like $115,000. The other one was like $150,000 or something like that, right? Because the price point was very different. But it got me in the game. It got me started to start learning what this was all about, right? And then actually the same year we bought another 11 units in that same market, right? So in the first year we grew quite significantly, and that really got me excited about this business.
Absolutely. You know, it's that taste where it's like that little appetizer going like, oh my gosh, I can actually do this. I can scale and I can start building up from there. And I like the fact, you know, starting small, right? And then building up from there, scaling, because that's what a lot of people they want to go big, but if you want to go big, you have to do the little things first, right? And that's, you know, starting with a property, you know, maybe you can or cannot self-manage it. Is being pragmatic and understanding strategically, am I able to do this? But speaking of, talk about your first deal. What was it like? What was that property like? I already see the
Yeah.
smile, so I would love to dive into the story.
Yeah, no, it was scary, right? Because first of all, here I am, taking money out of not retirement, but brokerage accounts and starting to self-manage it and be responsible for it. And it's like, I mean, now the numbers are just kind of they're very small, but that it was pretty scary because you put I don't know $25,000, $30,000 down. This is not nothing, right? Put that in, got a loan and stuff. I was like, oh man, I hope I can pay this monthly mortgage, whatever that was back then. I hope that we can get tenants in there. I hope that you know, stuff doesn't blow up
A
on
lot of
us,
the
right?
unknown, yeah.
Right. But then also I was like, well, you have to, you have to take some risk. You have to put your money to work. And I felt fortunate because I had, good advisors, good partner or a broker. And he also became my property manager plus later on became my partner in some deals we did later on, right? So I was like, okay, that, and then the reality hits, right? You buy it, and then the water heater blows up or something, So we had some setbacks, some back and
Yeah.
forth, but you could start seeing the movement, you start seeing the income and so on. I was like, oh, actually, this kind of makes sense.
Makes sense. You know, I love that because it was funny when I first started getting into real estate, I was thinking, you know, well, are we going to do single family? We're going to do the townhomes, the triplex, the quadplex. Now, with me still being in high school at the time, my mother still being in that W-2, it was kind of one of those moments where, well, can we self-manage? What if we don't get tenants? Like, what if we're not able to pay? Like, well, how do we do this? We went down the syndication route and go to scale a little quicker and a little bigger. But I love the fact we just kind of dove in. You're like, well, what if I can't do it? But I'm going to do it anyway. That's the point, just doing it, going for it.
Yeah.
So kind of fast forward now, let's say 10 years, let's say present day, where are you at right now in your business? Like where are you investing? Is it still multifamily? Is it commercial? What do you have your eyes set on for
Yeah,
investments?
yeah. So between those two, three deals in the first year and now, right, a lot of things have changed. And actually, we did obviously get into the syndication world because, we couldn't do it by our own account, right? So it went from some joint ventures to syndication, started syndicating in like 2019, did some deals then in 2020 and 21 up till about 22 on the multifamily space. And then, interest rates started going up rapidly and so on. And it really became a difficult thing to do. So what ended up happening, so we started slowing down because, hey, it's hard to borrow, money is much more expensive now and so on, right? At
Absolutely.
some point, I think if I count everything up, it's been like 2,700 units that we have invested in. It was like
Wow.
35 commercial deals we did, right? Something to that effect. Um, and then and I learned so much along the way, right, Michael? Because one thing is, buying a fourplex or two of them and having a property management company. It's just me, I can figure it out. Well, now we
Hmm.
started buying, 200 unit apartment building or portfolios and stuff. And suddenly, well, the whole thing just explodes because you have, you know, property
Terminal
management, you
velocity.
got investors, you got all these other things, right? So really had to start figuring out what it looked like to be operating a business versus just operating a small investment portfolio, right? So there were some lessons that we can dive into that. But where am I now? So as the market started shifting there in 22, 23, we're like, okay, well, multifamily is hard to make that work right now. What else? And then when we discovered commercial and warehousing slash small bay industrial and that type of stuff. So we started in bacon. We actually went back home to New Mexico to start buying that stuff, right? So we bought a handful of properties in Albuquerque, and again at the right time because yeah, interest rates were high, but cap rates were also very high, meaning you got good value for your money, and those deals have been great. They've been cash flowing well and so on, you know.
Absolutely. And, I'm a cash flow heavy investor. So when you talk about cash flow, it makes my heart sing. But, it's interesting that you say that, yes, money is definitely more difficult to leverage right now because it's more expensive. But the point is, you were able to acknowledge the fact, hey, we can't have to pivot a little bit. Like we still do multifamily, but we can't, put all of our eggs in one basket. We kind of have to diverse into, warehouse and more commercial, industrial and stuff like that. And that's the beauty about this business is you could take the same model and apply it to different things. So you don't have to be hyper fixated on one particular subject, whether it be multifamily or commercial. It's where to pivot and move with the market because it's always swinging. It's always a cycle. Thing is, don't get swung by the market. Don't get hit by it.
Yeah,
That's
and
the
there's been
biggest
some
thing.
challenges too, as you can imagine,
Oh,
but
absolutely. But I'd love to dive into a challenge that, well, let's say now, if you're able to talk about it, the hardest part so far between first deal and those 10 years. I know the law of the first deal is like the hardest one, but during that time frame, what was the one thing that you learned so much from that seemed like, oh, this is really bad, but it was like one of the biggest lessons that was able to help you carry on to where you are today?
yeah, so the way we were investing, this was up in the Ohio or Pennsylvania area. I had a partner or have a partner who was also going to be the property manager. He had been running his own portfolio for many years. He was going to scale up and become the property manager of all these units we were buying. And the biggest pain we had, he was relatively local, but he wasn't next door. He was an hour, hour and a half away, right? So he was starting to build a property management company. He was building the plane as we were landing, right?
Right.
So that cost, I mean, and this was again, remember how hard it was to hire people in 2020, 21,
That's
and
right.
22. So he was trying to build this property management company while we already owned the properties, while we were trying to, rehab and put tenants in there and everything else. So I started seeing the chaos behind the scenes because we were meeting every week on this, and it was always the owner on the calls because he was the only one who had the answers and stuff like that. So I was like, wow, this is not good because this feels out of control. Because I used to work in big corporations where, stuff was a little bit more under
Structured.
control. Otherwise, you would never
Yeah.
grow to that size. So like, wow. So I was like, well, I can freak out about it and like be nervous because I'm 2,000 miles away, or I can start finding ways to be more helpful. So I started, and I have this analytical mind, right? So I was like, well, let me help you get more structured. Let me help you put some systems in place. Let me help you think about how the business should grow versus like just this chaos that I see, right? So I started meeting with him and his team and building systems based on the EOS model, right? Entrepreneurial operating system model and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So I started seeing the problems, but also like, how can I help overcome these problems, right? And that was really helpful and beneficial for him, for me, and it taught me to what does it mean? What does it mean to run a small business, right?
Right. And it's acknowledging those areas of improvement where you can go, well, here's the problem. How can I develop a solution? We're actually syndications and investing is really like just finding a solution to a particular problem. Okay, you don't have time. Okay, why? I'm working too much. Okay, maybe invest. Maybe this system isn't working. Okay, let's try this system. Maybe it works. So you're like almost like kind of people like us, we're like the solution bringers, we're the solution brewers. Like it's all this witchcraft that we try to do. It's like, okay, how can we improve this? How can we refine this? So I love that you brought that up. But what has been your biggest, I guess, on the more positive note, what has been your biggest triumph so far with your business and with your journey so far?
Well, quitting my job, right?
Well,
Getting out of my
yeah.
W-2 job. That was a big triumph there, but that's more personal. I think just, the returns that we made for our investors, right? Some of those really fantastic deals. The one deal we did in Phoenix that returned like 350% or some crazy amount, right?
Wow.
So,
That's
people
beautiful.
they loved me when when I send them all that money back. That was huge, right? So there's been some big wins there, but I don't think that yeah, that's important. But I think actually, Michael, what's more important to me is just that growth I have had, right, as an individual. I never considered
Mhm.
myself an entrepreneur, dude. I was always working for somebody else, but now I'm like, wow, I am an entrepreneur. I can build. real estate portfolios. I can do, my consulting business. I can do coaching and all these other things. There's always something new to put my hands on, and that has always felt really exciting.
Absolutely. It's acknowledging the self-value and the journey that you have and have built. It's not necessarily the destination, it's where you've come from and also the path that you've trailblazed. Because the path that an entrepreneur takes, especially when it comes to investments and syndications or any investment, is not exactly the easiest. It's one of those things where you kind of, you have your days where it's like, oh, this is great. And the next day you're pulling your hair out and just losing your mind. It's like there's no in between, but it's that acknowledgement where you're like, I'm able to do this and I'm able to help people, invest in coaching them. Like it's just incredible. Couple of questions actually that kind of tie into that. You built out a coaching platform, and I'd love to dive into that because I know people develop a coaching program, but I never hear the back end as to why. So, what made you decide to start teaching people and start to give back to people and say, hey, this is what I'm doing?
Yeah, and actually, I actually did not develop a platform in the sense that I have a big old coaching program and I'm a
Yeah,
guru. I thrive on working with individuals, helping individuals grow either their personal life or not grow their person, but get more clarity in their personal life, get more joy and satisfaction on that, or their businesses if they're small business owners, getting their business under control and helping with that, right? That's really my joy. What did that come from? Well, I had so much help doing my journey from being a W-2 employee to be, real estate investor to entrepreneurship and all that stuff from coaches and mentors. And I've always liked to teach people, but I realized.
it's okay. We can cut that.
Okay. Sorry, I
Don't
lost my mic for a
apologize.
minute. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Um, so I always loved teaching and but coaching and consulting is a little bit different, right? You're actually trying to pull the stuff out of the individual. So all the help I had gotten, I wanted to pay that forward. So I got training in how to be a coach and so, and I started helping people. It's like, hey, somebody that was new in real estate. It's like, hey, I'd love to help you, buy your first deal, your second deal, scale it or whatever, right? So I started small doing that. And then as my skills grew, I was like, well, I can go beyond just helping people with their real estate. I can now help them with their small business that's struggling where they need to get out of their way. I can start helping individuals who wants to, maybe go from W-2 job to entrepreneurship or whatever, right? So I started developing these skills because two things like real estate did not take up my full day. And this paying it forward and this joy of just helping people was so big for me.
I love that. Giving back is so important. It's like you sat there and acknowledged, like I have before, where it's like I've gotten so much help. How can I take what I know and what I've learned and have been given as a gift, and can I share it to other people? Say, like, hey, this is where I've come from. This is what I'm able to do. I want to share the same thing with you. I think that's awesome. And that's really important too, because what does Zig Ziglar say? You can get anything you want in life as long as you help others get what they want in life. I'm kind of wordsmithing it and butchering it, but it's something similar to that, where it's that
Yeah,
acknowledgement of just lending a helping hand and giving back. That's so important. So I love that.
yeah, absolutely.
And I guess my last question, well, excuse me, there's a couple more that I'm brewing up in the back of my head. How do you look for investment opportunities right now? I know the economy right now is going through a bit of a phase. Like you have the transfer of wealth, you have rates changing, you have a lot of geopolitical stuff that's happening. But in a sense, coming back to ground zero, how are you looking for deals? Well, what's
Yeah.
your structure behind that?
Yeah, I think it's a great time to buy now if you can, put some of those worries aside you just mentioned because there are a lot of deals that are struggling out there. So,
Yep,
if you can get your hands on deals that are struggling, you can probably get them at a significant discount to what they were trading at 3, 4, 5 years ago, right? So there's a huge opportunity there. If you have the courage to step up and if your investors has the courage to invest with you, right?
that's right.
Personally, I really loved, I mean, we just sold a warehouse deal a month ago that really was a good return. I really love that space. A couple of reasons because it's a lot less work than multifamily. That's my secret. And, I like the local control, right? And right now, I don't need to go out and raise millions of dollars from investors, right? I like to do
Right.
some slightly smaller deals with my own capital, maybe a couple of joint venture partners, because, syndications are great, but you also have a lot of money that you're responsible for and so on, right? So I I tend to look at that. So right now it's growing the coaching and consulting. It's also buying, smaller deals that make sense on the industrial side and so on. So that's really been my focus right now.
Makes sense. And I like that you dove into that because you have a lot of brokers and partners out there that are very hard on multifamily. Like, yes, I get it, but you have to figure out, if I take the syndication structure into a venture structure, where else could I place it? Like, for example, you have your self storage, you have your warehouses, you have industrial plexus, right? Like, how can you adapt? How can you pivot? Like when you read the articles, it's like, hey, the office space is doing great, but multifamily may not be. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm kind of just making things up. It's like, when you read different things and start to put your ear to the track on the market, it's like, okay, where should we be going right now? Should we pivot? Should we stick to our guns right now? What should we do? So I like the fact that you're looking for more to go, okay, well, this is happening right now in this particular market. What's happening in this market? So we can still get the returns our investors deserve and also need, and we can also steward that capital. So I love that you brought that up. That's really
Yeah.
important.
Thank
And second to last question, I promise. um, what is one piece of advice you would give to somebody that's still in their W 2 or is trying to look for a way out to go, I have my retirement account or I have savings accounts, but I'm working so much and I want to get some time back? What would be a piece of advice that you would give them if you were in front of them right now?
Yeah, definitely step back and really get clear on your kind of the vision that you're building towards. What are you hoping to do, right? What is the life you want to create for yourself? Because what I've seen and working with small business owners, a lot of them is like, oh, I'm just going to start a business. Well, they don't really start a business. They start a job for themselves and then they're just working just as much and maybe making less money, right?
Right.
So start a true business and then sorry, that's not what I meant. Think about the vision of what it is that you want first, and then get clear on that, and then start creating goals around that, right? Creating goals around the outcome that you want based upon that vision you have for your future, right? And I was lucky I did that, right? Because hey, I had the vision of time freedom and travel and other things, right? So the business I have now is real estate. Well, it doesn't take much of my time. Coaching and consulting, well, I can do it from wherever and I can, have a lot of free time in there too, right? So that's what we need to think about. Get clear on your vision and then start putting goals around it, right? And ideally, if you don't know how to execute on all that, get somebody to help you, get a coach, a mentor, or something like that, right? To work you through it all.
Absolutely. It's almost a way of acknowledging the end goal, the end result, and then reverse engineering it back to go, what do I need to do? What kind of goals do I need to set? What kind of tasks, responsibilities I need to do in order to get to the end goal? And it's almost like, you have to set a timeline, a deadline for yourself and do some homework to go, this is what I want. How do I get there? And reverse engineer it. That's what I did, where I thought that forward engineering was the right way, but I realized, okay, I'm forward engineering to where? Like,
Right.
where am I going? I have no idea. But if I know what my end goal is and then build a structure behind that, an actual business, I'm like, now it makes sense. Now I know exactly what to do. The path is clear to exactly what I need to do. So once I do that, I realize that I can get to my goal quicker and more efficiently. So I'm really glad you brought that up. And last question, how can people find you and reach out to you either to connect you with your consulting or your coaching, or either that to invest with you directly?
Yeah. The best place is just my personal website. So it's my first name, Jens, Jens, and then last name Nielsen, Nielsen. So jensnielsen.us. You can look on there. Yeah, there's coaching, consulting, there's real estate, everything is there. And my phone number, the way to book calls are right there. And that's probably the best way to reach at me.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And ladies and gentlemen, listen, if you want to learn more about how to invest in real estate and how to connect with some of the best, check the description below. You'll see a lot of our other episodes as well. And you can see Jens and his contact information and also his website as well. If you want to reach out to him directly, please give him a follow and show him support. And if you're trying to get some clarity on your goals, he's the man to talk to. And to all my listeners out there, build yourself better and bigger every day. Live better, live bigger. Always move forward. I really hope you got some value out of this because I know I for sure had. And Jens, thank you so much for coming onto the show, my friend, and sharing your wisdom. I certainly have gotten a lot, and I know that my listeners have gotten quite a bit. So thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks, Michael.